Good morning, NBT Nation. Good morning. It is a random pop up live. Been kind of playing around with the idea of scheduled lives and random pop up lives. And in 2026, you're going to see far more scheduled lives. But still, every once in a while, when there's something pressing on my mind that I want to share out to NBT Nation, you'll still see me popping up live here on YouTube. Great to see everybody. We're in that kind of holiday period where you get some time off from work, maybe. Hopefully, you're home kind of enjoying that. Maybe you're at work. I don't know. But today's topic, you've been asked to deliver some training, put some training together. And of course, being a certified no boring trainer, you dive into the analysis phase. You go start talking to the frontline users, frontline managers. You really start digging in. You take that request, but you really start to unpack it. And soon you figure out, you quickly discover this ain't a training problem. This, the root cause issue has really nothing to do with training. And the training that you would provide is it's got nothing to do with what the real issue is. That is a tough situation to be in. So what do you do? How do you handle that? Where do you go from there? We're going to unpack all that in today's live. I'm going to read a little bit from my new ebook, The Hard Truths of Becoming a No Boring Trainer. And it's going to tie into this topic. So lots going on. What do you do when you discover that the solution to the issue really has nothing to do with training, but you've been asked to put together a training? Training ain't the answer. What do you do? Let's dive in, NBT Nation. Great to have everybody out there with us now. Let me know where you're from. Leave me some messages down in the chat feed. And of course, whether you're watching this live or in person, give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, etc., etc. So what do you do? I'm going to read real quick a little snippet from my new ebook, The Hard Truths of Becoming a Certified No Boring Trainer. Because it sets the stage for today's discussion. The ebook is now on sale. You can grab it over at noboringtraining.com for less than the price of a cup of coffee. You can get 60 pages, 20 hard truths, 15 infographics, all designed to help take stale, boring corporate training and graduate to the next level, to inject no boring training concepts into it so that you can have certified no boring training. It's really the truths I wish I had, the knowledge I wish I had when I started out as a corporate trainer, all neatly packaged to help you make that jump from boring to results, not yawns. All right. Commercials out of the way. Let's dive in, everybody. You've been asked to deliver a training, but your analysis shows that training ain't the answer, and it's not going to solve the problem. It ain't got nothing to do with it. So what do you do as a trainer? Let's start off with a little bit of reading from the ebook to set the stage. Over many years in corporate training, one inescapable truth keeps coming up. When someone asks for a training to be planned, especially if it's in response to mistakes or issues, the topics they want addressed usually don't touch the root cause of the actual issue. At bare minimum, there's a deeper story. I once had to plan a team-wide training in 3 weeks for 60 phone-based sales and customer service people, including everything from basic etiquette to resolving upset customers. I had to pause all the planned programs that month to build everything from scratch: the sessions, the content, the exercises, the handouts, everything built completely from scratch. Why? Why, you might ask? Someone handled a phone call poorly, and the boss listened to the recording. Was the phone training the worst topic to address? No, of course not. Was it the core issue? Nope. It was a classic people problem tied to leadership standards and coaching. Ultimately, the boss was upset and weaponized training. So there you have it. That's a little brief snippet from my new ebook, The Hard Truths of Becoming a No Boring Trainer. You can grab that on sale, like I said, for less than a cup of coffee, but it really sets the stage because this scenario plays out again and again across corporate America. Somebody in a leadership position, somebody with the authority says, "Well, you need a training," and when you, as the trainer, really dive in, you quickly realize the root cause issue is not going to be addressed via training. So, what do you do about all that? And by the way, those root causes typically they will go trace their way back to a people, process, or systems issue. So if it's a people, process, or system, give you some quick examples. People, like kind of like my story that I shared. You've hired the wrong people. You haven't set the right standards. They're a discipline problem. They haven't been coached. They're refusing to get with the program. They're not following the provided scripts. They're not following the provided direction, whatever. Training ain't gonna unravel that. You're gonna get a bunch of really upset people in the room because 2 or 3 bad apples won't get with the program, but now you're gonna train everybody? What a colossal waste of company resources, time, and energy. Maybe it's a process issue. The process is not documented, it's not vetted, it's not explained. Okay, maybe training can help there, but maybe the process is broken. Well, what in the earth is training gonna do to solve a broken process? It ain't gonna do nothing. The same thing with systems. If you've got 2 computer systems that don't talk to each other, well, training isn't gonna unravel that. You're gonna waste a whole bunch of time and energy trying to train that when you gotta get the systems to talk to each other. That's like an IT consultant tech thing, right? Not training. So, anyway, some quick examples there. So, what do you do? The first thing you have to do, and this is really where you start to graduate into becoming a certified no boring trainer, is to be able to quickly summarize the data, summarize your findings. What is the real root cause issue? We'll use the phone training from my story. The real root cause issue is that nobody had been giving that particular group standards. Nobody had been enforcing those standards, and nobody had been dealing with the individuals who didn't want to kind of get along and follow those standards. That's the root cause issue. Training is not going to do anything until all of those are put into place. And training is not the appropriate group to create the standards, let alone enforce the standards. That's a management leadership issue, right? So, you as the trainer, as you dive in, whether it's people, process, or systems, you have to neatly, cleanly lay out what is the actual root cause issue of the thing that generated this training request. You have to lay that out and you have to have facts and supporting evidence to go with that. That's why you need to go talk to the frontline users, the frontline leaders and managers. That's why you need to start pulling reports. Excuse me. In the example I'm shared from my book about the phone training, listen to some of those phone calls. If it's got something to do with a process, get the process. Get who is the process owner? Where is that process documented? Where does it live? What rev is the current rev? All of that kind of stuff. If it's a systems issue, you got to kind of quickly get up to speed on why these systems aren't talking to each other. Or maybe there's a system that's lacking, or maybe your frontline users are not able to access the system because they don't have accounts set up. Whatever the root cause issue, detail that very clearly, and then have those 3 or 4 or 5 bullet points to say, "This is why I'm saying this is the root cause issue." It's not a training problem, really. It's a fill in the blank problem, and my evidence is A, B, C, D, E. So what is the root cause issue? And then very quickly, cleanly, what is your evidence? And then lastly, why is that not a training problem? Why is that not a training problem? So, hey, listen, I've really dug in, and in talking to the frontline users, the frontline managers, it really seems like the actual issue that's going on is this one team over here isn't following the corporate directives, practices, and policies. And I can't address that via training. That's really a leadership issue. And my evidence to support that is blah, 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 blah. This is not a training issue because people can't get logged into the system in the first place. I really can't train them on anything because they can't even get into the damn system to begin with. So, what is the real issue? What is your evidence? And then why is that not a training issue? Line that out. If you type that up in a document, put together maybe a one or two PowerPoint slide presentation, if that helps you to be able to neatly, communicate that out quickly and cleanly, that's the first step into the process. What do you do next? Communicate that back to the person who's requested the training. Communicate that out to the group of people involved in this training request. In my experience is, that email goes out that says, "Hey, I've done some due diligence on your request for training. Here's what I'm finding. It looks like the actual root cause is this. Here's the evidence that supports that. Here's why this is possibly not a training issue. How would you like to proceed?" It's amazing the number of those requests that magically go away, that magically all of a sudden, "Oh, well, thank you for this feedback. Let me look into it. Let me go have some conversations." And all of a sudden, it ain't a training request anymore. I've had experiences where I've sent that sort of communication out, and the leader has said, "Hey, thank you so much. I did not realize that there was a problem with people logging into the system. That's an easy fix. Thank you so much." So now you're being supportive. You're not only saying, "Hey, this ain't a training issue. Here's what the root cause could be. Here's the evidence that supports it." And you're pointing that leader in a direction to go solve that problem. Um, you don't want to go back to that leader, just say, "Well, this ain't a training problem. Tough luck." You want to give them maybe some solutions, bare minimum, point them in a direction. But oftentimes, when you lay out, here's the real issue, or at least this is what I think the real issue is. Here is the evidence that supports that. And then here is why this is not really like training really isn't appropriate for that. Oftentimes, that will go away. What will also happen is that there will then be a follow on meeting that you're invited to as the trainer, where the leader says, "I want to dig into this a little bit more." And now you're in a meeting room where you're kind of laying things out. And that can get a little dicey sometimes. Sometimes it's just the leader is trying to do some more fact finding. Let's get all the right people in the room and talk it out. Those are wonderful collaborative meetings. And is when you put those, here's that one pager that lays out, here's the root cause issue, here's the evidence that supports that, here's why this isn't training, you get the right people in the room, and next thing you know, oh yeah, well, we just got to get IT on the horn, and we'll get them logged into the system, go from there. Oh geez, you know what? Our process is broken. Who do we got to get involved to get the process sorted out and redocumented and get on the right rev and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes that can get a little dicey because then people want to blame shift and whatever. My recommendation is, as the trainer, that's where you're quiet and you're like, "Hey, I'm just sharing what people are telling me. I'm all I'm saying is that based on this, it's really not a training is not really appropriate." And then you be quiet. Let the rest of the room sort things out. Now, training still could be part of a solution as this discussion is going on. So when the leader says, "Hey, I want to get a meeting together of all the right people. Let's get this sorted out." The conversation starts and they realize, "Oh, well, yeah, we'll just have IT get people's accounts set up. That's an easy fix." Well, hey, trainer person, now that we have their account set up, do we still need to train them? That's where you got to kind of be ready to say yes, no, maybe. Yes. Now, once we get their account set up, then training would be appropriate based on the request, based on the outcome we're trying to achieve, yes, training would be appropriate. Here's my training design. Here's how we'd handle it, blah, blah, blah. Or based on the request and the outcome you're trying to achieve, you may say, yeah, I still just don't think training is appropriate. Here's why. The real hangup is that people can't get logged in. Our evidence shows that once they get logged in, the system is so simple that, I mean, we could send an email out or I could do a quick explainer video, but I really don't think this would require as a full on classroom style, let's take everybody offline type training. So, all that to say, once that group of people gets together and they hash out what the root cause could really be, if you're invited to that meeting, be ready that if there's a place for training to plug in, once that root cause is dealt with, be ready to go with solutions. All right. Now, let's say the root cause is something where the training is just not going to be appropriate. You've got, let's say, a team that is a real discipline problem. They're on a PIP. They're just not, they're just refusing to follow the policies, practices, and procedures of the organization. They're not bought in. It's really a people problem. You don't want training to get weaponized. You don't want training to become the hammer that beats people into compliance. It's a totally different story if people are not able to do the policies, practices, and procedures because they just don't know what to do. That's different. Of course, that's when training is, that's when you should be doing the training, right? But if they're just objectively refusing, that's a leadership problem. That's a people problem. That's an HR problem. And you don't want to be brought in as part of a weaponized response to that. So, what do you do in that case? Well, that's where you're going to have a real heart to heart talk with your leadership. And that's where you're going to have to be able to connect the dots of why training is not effective. It is not appropriate. It is not going to solve the problem that they think it's going to solve. That's where you really got to sit down and say, hey, of course I want to help with training. Of course I want to be able to help these people grow and develop and move the business forward. Of course. But you need to be able to lay out for the leader why training is going to be a complete waste of time, money, and energy. Why is the training going to waste time, money, and energy? And that's usually what the leader keys in on when they start hearing, hey, I could do this, but it's not really going to solve your problem of the disruptive people from this example. It's not going to solve the problem of your broken process. It's not going to solve the problem of the lack of business systems. It's not a magic wand. And here's why: I can go in and do training all day long, but this is going to waste time, energy, and money. And there's opportunity cost. That's usually how you get their wheels spinning. So, what do you do? Number one, here is the challenge we're facing. You're having a problem with X. It goes back to, what is that real issue? What is the evidence that supports it? So, what is the challenge we're facing? And then what is the evidence that supports it? It's really the same from the very first step that we started talking about. But then you got to give data and facts as to why it's not a training issue. Again, pretty much the same as the first step, but give data and facts of how it's going to waste time. Yeah, sure, I can pull everybody offline and do this big giant training you need, but the reality is, excuse me, I can pull everybody offline. That's 30 people for 4 hours. Their average wage is this. That's going to cost approximately X amount of dollars. But the real problem you're having is these 3 individuals over here are not really complying. They're not wanting to follow the practices, policies, and procedures. So we're going to spend this amount of money to deal with these individuals. This is going to have no impact on them. this is what it's going to cost you to not have any impact. Yeah, I can pull everybody offline to do this training, even if it's virtual. Here's what it's going to cost you in terms of time, salary, what they're not going to be able to do, possibly PTO, shift coverage, all that kind of stuff. Here's what it's going to cost you to fix your broken process or to do the training that fixes your broken process. But at the end of the day, the process isn't fixed. So here's what that training is going to cost in terms of real dollars and cents, real money. And it's going to have absolutely no impact on that broken process. So ultimately, what do you do when you are really working with that leader and the leader wants to have you do the training, but the training isn't the right solution, and you've given them a solution, you've given them their findings, you've laid out the real issues, you've had a meeting, whatever, the leader just keeps pushing. Let me summarize. Number one, start off just like you did in step number one. What is the real issue? What is your supporting facts? And then why is this not a training issue? Number two, have a sit down meeting with them. And number three, clearly paint the picture of why this is going to be a waste of time. Why and how much money is it going to cost to not deal with the issue? it's that's really your best case scenario of getting that leader's attention. Now, all of that to say, most of the time that works in my experience when you really start laying out the case of how much time and energy it's going to cost. I mean, you could even start to factor in your time of this is how long it's going to take me to develop this system or this program. This is how much that time is going to cost you. This is what it's going to interrupt for me to put all this together. When you start laying all that out, plus the time for all the people to participate in the training, and then you clearly paint the picture of how that doesn't really solve the root cause issue, most of the time, that's when leaders will go, got it. Now I got it. Every once in a while, that's when a leader will say, I don't care. I still want you to do the training. And that's where you have to kind of dive in sometimes and realize that, as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, guess what? You're going to be doing some training that in your heart of hearts is not really going to deal with that root cause issue. And that's a subject for a different live. So there you have it, my friends. You've been asked to put together some training. You do the analysis, you realize this is not addressing the root cause issue. Oh my gosh, what do you do? Well, like I said, get a summary of your findings. What is the real root cause issue? What is your evidence that supports it? And what is a clear reason why this is not a training issue? That's a good starting point. You communicate that back out to the person who requested it. Most of the time, that's when the requests just magically disappear. Occasionally, they will get you together in a room with people to solve that root cause issue. Most of the time, you're not going to have much to say, but you should be prepared with a possible training response if solving that root cause issue then naturally triggers training, and training would be appropriate. So be ready for that. And then occasionally you'll have a leader who still is just wanting to do that training, lay out those same exact things, and then lay out the dollars and cents in terms of time, energy, and effort that it's going to take to do this training with zero results. And just put it together in quick dollars and cents. You don't have to go on and on. You could do that in a very simple table, very simple chart. That is how you deal when or that's what you do when you find out that training is really not the appropriate response after you do your analysis. Let me know what you think. NBT Nation, leave me some comments down below. Even if you're watching this on the replay, let me know what you're thinking. Have you used an approach like this? What else might you do? If you're interested in the hard truths of becoming a no boring trainer, please visit noboringtraining.com, where for less than a cup of coffee, you can turbocharge your training and take it from boring lecture-based, presentation heavy, and start down the pathway of becoming a certified no boring trainer. Thanks for listening. Hopefully all of you around NBT Nation are enjoying this nice holiday time frame. I wish you all the best, and we'll see you again here real soon.